The Royal Nebula Palace looms against the cosmic backdrop of the Enshari Dominion, a testament to the species' ancient power and refined telepathic artistry. Its towers, like spires of shimmering crystal, pierce the heavens, glimmering in the shifting lights of nearby stars. Psychic energy fields hum with a delicate yet unyielding intensity, protecting the palace from even the most brazen of attacks. Each hallway within the palace is alive with an invisible current, flowing in harmony with the thoughts and emotions of its inhabitants. It is a world built upon tradition, where every movement, every word is weighed with purpose and consequence. The walls of the palace tell the history of a species that has long held dominion over the galaxy, proud and untouchable. But beneath this serene and powerful exterior, there is tension as old as the stars themselves. Political machinations swirl in the background, and within the opulent chambers of the Royal Nebula Palace, power is a game played by whispers, not weapons. It is a world where danger is never far, even when it is masked by beauty and elegance. And in the heart of this world is Princess Virelia, heir to the throne, who finds herself at the crossroads of duty and uncertainty. Her life, her destiny, has been shaped by the rules of a species that has never had to fight for survival, until now. The Enshari are a species born from the stars themselves, their powers as ancient as the galaxies they command. With their telepathic abilities, they can communicate with a single thought, reading minds and forging bonds that run deeper than words could ever express. Their society is a complex web of power, tradition, and unspoken rules, where status is everything, and loyalty is a concept that is understood in the deepest recesses of the mind. Yet, despite their immense technological and psychic prowess, the Enshari have always seen themselves as superior, isolated in their towering citadels, untouched by the rest of the universe. They are a species bound by the weight of their own legacy, their actions driven by a code that has remained unchanged for centuries. It is a code that elevates them to near godlike status in the eyes of other races, even as it isolates them from the rest of the galaxy. But for all their power, the Enshari have a fundamental flaw: their arrogance. They dismiss the strength and resilience of other species, particularly humans. To them, humanity is a primitive race, one whose place in the galaxy is yet to be earned. This attitude breeds contempt, a dangerous underestimation of the one force they have never accounted for: human creativity and adaptability. Princess Virelia stands at the heart of the Royal Nebula Palace, her gaze cast over the vast expanse of her dominion. The weight of her heritage presses heavily on her shoulders, an heir to a throne built on centuries of tradition. She has been trained since birth to lead, to rule with grace and diplomacy. Her words are measured, her actions precise. Yet, beneath the composed exterior, there lies a deep unease. Virelia has never known true danger. Her life has been one of privilege and safety, shielded by her people's psychic abilities and the vast walls of their ancient empire. But as whispers of political unrest grow louder, she finds herself faced with an unfamiliar challenge: how to navigate the world of power that is governed by far more than mere diplomacy. She has never been trained in combat, nor has she been taught how to protect herself. Her role has always been that of a leader, not a fighter. But her world is changing, and with it, the realization that her position in the galaxy is far more precarious than she could ever imagined. The danger she faces is real, and no amount of psychic ability or royal blood will shield her from the growing threats lurking at the edges of her life.
Jackson Reeve is not the kind of man anyone expects to be called upon for a mission like this. Once a decorated soldier, his reputation as a fierce fighter has long since been overshadowed by the scars of his past. The galaxy knows him now as a low-tier security officer working in the underbelly of alien spaceports, a place far removed from the grandeur of palaces and royal affairs. His hands are calloused from years of hard work, his eyes shadowed by the weight of memories that he would rather forget. He is a man of few words, a man whose inner demons have made him emotionally closed off and wary of trusting anyone. His past, marked by betrayal, the loss of comrades, and the brutal realities of intergalactic warfare, has turned him into a cynic, a survivor who has learned the hard way that loyalty is a fleeting illusion. Despite his physical strength and combat prowess, Jackson has come to see himself as a broken man, far removed from the life of honor and glory he once knew. But even in his brokenness, there is something unmistakable about Jackson Reeve, a resilience that refuses to be snuffed out. He is a man who, despite everything, is still capable of great things. The universe may have cast him aside, but that doesn't mean he's done fighting. And when the call comes to serve as a bodyguard to a princess, he has no idea that this assignment will challenge not only his beliefs about duty, but also his understanding of what it means to be human. The breach came without warning. In the heart of the Royal Nebula Palace, the silence was shattered as a violent intrusion rattled the halls. The elite and Shari guards, renowned for their psychic strength and battle readiness, were caught off guard, completely overwhelmed by a stealthy force that bypassed their defenses with chilling efficiency. Their telepathic barriers were breached, and their once impenetrable stronghold was compromised. Princess Virelia, caught in the chaos, was forced to retreat to the palace's core. Panic rose among her advisors, their carefully curated sense of control slipping through their fingers like dust in the wind. The elite guards, usually so confident in their abilities, were helpless in the face of a real threat. The attack was swift, efficient, and terrifying, leaving Virelia shaken to the core. As the Anshari guards scrambled to restore order, Virelia realized the truth. Their power, their legacy, their security, they had all been based on an illusion. This breach exposed the fatal flaw of their society. For the first time in her life, Virelia understood that no amount of psychic energy could protect her from the threats lurking in the galaxy. And in that moment, she made a decision that would change everything. In the aftermath of the attack, as the palace slowly regained its composure, Princess Virelia's mind was set. She could no longer rely on the traditional forces that had always shielded her. The Anshari elite had failed her when she needed them most. There was only one option left. Virelia called for Jackson Reeve, the human bodyguard who had long been dismissed by the Anshari as an unworthy choice. To her advisors, the decision was an insult. To her, it was a statement. She was no longer bound by the suffocating expectations of her people. This was her choice, a decision that would force her to confront the very thing her species had never acknowledged, the strength of humanity. "I choose him," Virelia said, her voice steady yet filled with defiance. Her advisors gasped, their protests falling on deaf ears. Jackson Reeve, human, flawed, and marked by his own scars, would be her protector. It wasn't just about his combat skills, it was about something deeper. Virelia saw in Jackson the very thing her people had overlooked: resilience, the ability to rise from the ashes, to adapt and survive. Perhaps, just perhaps, that was the one thing that could protect her in a galaxy full of unknown dangers. And with that, a new chapter began, one that would shape both their fates in ways they could never imagine. The Royal Nebula Palace, its shimmering towers bathed in the faint light of distant stars, felt distant, detached from any sense of reality. The corridors inside, filled with the quiet hum of telepathic energy, buzzed with the weight of tradition and history. This was not a place where humanity belonged, not a place Jackson Reeve, a fallen soldier with too many scars, both mental and physical, would ever feel comfortable. Jackson stood awkwardly beside Princess Virelia, his arms crossed as he surveyed his surroundings. This wasn't a job he wanted. He had his reasons for taking it, desperation mostly. His reputation among the galaxy's elite species was as tarnished as his armor, and this job as the royal bodyguard to the Anshari princess was nothing more than a paycheck, a way to survive another day. But survival wasn't the same as living, and he hadn't truly felt alive in years. Virelia stood beside him, calm, poised. Her beauty was effortless, her regal aura suffocating in its perfection. Her emerald eyes flicked toward him, a mixture of disdain and curiosity in her gaze. She could sense his discomfort, his reluctance. "Is it always so difficult to blend in with your kind?" she asked, her voice smooth, but with an edge of amusement. "Humanity's got a way of making its own mark," Jackson muttered, his sarcasm as sharp as ever. "So yeah, fitting in was never really my thing." Virilia's brow arched, her telepathic abilities brushing against his thoughts, sensing more than his words. "You're not like other humans." Jackson's eyes narrowed. "And you're not like other princesses." An uncomfortable silence settled between them, but neither one of them backed down. Despite their differences, something unspoken simmered beneath their words, a flicker of mutual intrigue and defiance. The grand tour through the fractured provinces was supposed to be a political spectacle, but Jackson quickly realized that it was more than just pageantry. The deeper they traveled into the Anshari territories, the more apparent it became. This was a mission fraught with danger. Not the kind of danger Jackson was used to, external, clear-cut threats, but something more insidious. The provinces were divided, torn between various Anshari factions, each vying for power. And Virilia, the heir to the throne, was more than just a political pawn. She was a symbol, a prize in a game she hadn't fully understood. Jackson observed her, this poised, elegant woman who had been trained in the intricacies of diplomacy but had no true grasp of what lay beneath the surface of her people's politics. He didn't trust anyone who relied too much on tradition or protocol, and Virilia's naivete about the world outside her palace only further deepened his skepticism. But as they moved from province to province, Jackson could see it. Virilia was being manipulated, her every step guided by unseen forces. "Are you sure you understand what's going on here?" Jackson asked, the cool air of the military zone biting at his skin. Virilia's eyes narrowed, her voice calm but filled with quiet authority. "I understand more than you think, Jackson. I am not blind to the game my people are playing." His expression softened ever so slightly. "This isn't just a game. These people will play dirty, and you're the biggest piece on the board." Her lips tightened, and she stared into the horizon, the faint flicker of doubt crossing her face. "I am a piece, but I refuse to be just that." The ambush came without warning. Jackson's instincts kicked in the moment the ship shuddered, his military training guiding his every move. The once serene surroundings now felt like a battlefield, the corridors echoing with chaos as Anshari soldiers, disguised as their royal guards, stormed their ship, weapons raised. Jackson fought back with brutal efficiency, his body moving on its own, the sharpness of his actions contradicting his usual brooding demeanor. He moved fast, protective, calculating, every attack an instinctive reflex. "Get her to the escape pod," Jackson shouted as Virilia looked on, wide-eyed with shock and fear. "You think you can protect me from my own people?" Virilia's voice was laced with disbelief, her hands trembling as she reached for the weapon at her side. "You don't get to make that decision right now," Jackson barked, his voice rough. He shoved her toward the escape pod, covering her retreat as blaster fire crackled all around them. Once they were safely sealed inside the pod, Jackson collapsed against the wall, panting heavily. Virilia, shaken, looked up at him, her mind racing. This wasn't an external threat. This was treason, betrayal within her own people, and it had nearly cost them everything. "Why?" she asked, her voice trembling as the truth began to sink in. "Why would they do this?" Jackson's face was hard as stone. "Because they can. Because you're a pawn, and some people in your empire are tired of waiting for you to make your move." The assassination attempt shattered any illusions Virilia had left about the Anshari's loyalty to her. The gravity of her situation became apparent. Her life was expendable to the very people she had trusted. For Jackson, this mission had gone from a simple job to something far more personal. He'd kept her alive, but barely, and now he couldn't afford to stop. "Looks like you're not just a princess anymore," Jackson said dryly as they moved deeper into the unknown. Virilia's lips tightened. "I never was. I just didn't realize how much the game had already shifted." "You don't get it," Jackson muttered. "It's not just about politics anymore. People want you dead, and it's my job to make sure they don't get the chance." As they ventured further into dangerous territories, the truth became undeniable. Varelia was no longer just a political pawn. She was the focal point of an empire's decay, and her survival meant something far more than just personal safety. It meant the future of the Nshari Dominion. In the weeks that followed, the line between protector and protected blurred. Varelia's loyal poise began to crack under the weight of her reality. She found herself relying on Jackson, not for diplomacy or tradition, but for something far more tangible: his humanity, his creativity in the face of every new threat, and his raw ability to survive against all odds. Jackson, in turn, began to understand that there was more to Varelia than he had thought. Beneath her refined demeanor was a woman fighting for her survival, for something more than just a throne. She had her own power, one he hadn't recognized before. Sometimes, Jackson said one evening, sitting beside her as they looked out into the endless expanse of space, the rules don't matter. Sometimes you just have to fight to survive. Varelia looked at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of understanding and something more. Something she hadn't expected to find in a human, let alone in a bodyguard. And sometimes, she replied softly, you find strength in places you least expect. Together, they faced the uncertain future ahead, united not by royalty or duty, but by survival, and something deeper, something that neither of them could yet fully define. Jackson leaned against the bulkhead of the small transport ship, his arms crossed, eyes fixed on the horizon of the alien world below. The sterile hum of the ship's engines felt like a constant reminder of the impending storm, both outside and within the walls of their makeshift alliance. Varelia, he said, his voice rough, the words heavier than he intended. You can't keep waiting for the perfect moment. The enemy doesn't wait for diplomacy. We need action, not words. Varelia stood a few paces away, her fingers twitching at the edge of her cloak as she gazed at the distant stars. The tension in her posture was almost tangible, the weight of her thoughts pressing down on her. She had been trained from childhood to lead with a clear mind, to negotiate with the subtlety of a telepath, and to always seek peace before conflict. But Jackson's sharp eyes, hardened by years of war, were not interested in diplomacy. I am not like you, Jackson, she said quietly, her voice carrying the weight of centuries of tradition. The Nshari don't fight as humans do. We do not rely on brute force. We lead through influence, through control. My people have learned that peace is the only true strength. Jackson's jaw tightened. Peace won't save us now, and you're not seeing it. This isn't just about control, it's about survival. And in war, you survive by fighting back, not by talking. A small flicker of emotion passed through Varelia's eyes, a brief flash of doubt, quickly masked. She had never truly understood Jackson's way of thinking. Her people had built their empire on the power of their minds, their influence over others, their ability to shape emotions with their telepathy. But Jackson saw only one path: action, battle, and victory at any cost. If you can't adapt to the realities of war, Jackson continued, his tone now growing more insistent, then I'm afraid we're not going to make it out of this. Varelia stood still, the weight of his words sinking in. She had always believed that intellect and patience would win the day, but Jackson's cold pragmatism felt more and more like the only solution. The silence between them stretched, the ideological divide a chasm neither was ready to cross, yet. Their journey took them deeper into enemy territory, and the tension between Jackson and Varelia only grew. As they walked through the narrow hallways of the hidden base, Jackson was already planning their next move. His mind raced with possibilities, each one a violent, tactical option. The air was thick with the tension of an impending strike. Varelia, on the other hand, remained poised, her thoughts calm, a distant look in her eyes as she accessed the telepathic network of her people. She tried to channel the inner peace of the Nshari, drawing strength from her psychic abilities. It was how she had always led, through understanding, through influence. I can't operate like this, Varelia, Jackson muttered as they walked through the base's corridors, his boots echoing in the silence. These Nshari, they don't know how to fight. It's all control, all talk. We're not going to win by sitting in meetings and thinking our way through it. Virelia's eyes flickered toward him, a slight trace of frustration in her gaze. "And your solution is always violence, Jackson? We must understand the mind of the enemy, not just crush them underfoot. We need to break them mentally." "You think too highly of them," Jackson shot back, voice hard. "They'll just regroup and we'll be in the same place. You need to be more aggressive. We can't sit back and wait for things to fall into place. They'll never expect us to strike first." They had been fighting, arguing for days now, each unable to understand the other's perspective. Jackson's humanity, his raw emotional reactions, clashed with Virelia's cool, calculated psychic influence. But slowly, amid their tension, something began to shift. Jackson's instincts and Virelia's psychic precision started to blend, creating an unpredictable strategy neither side had seen coming. Where Jackson's unpredictability met Virelia's telepathic influence, they became an unstoppable force, a fusion of human chaos and Nanshari control. "We can combine both," Virelia said slowly, her voice soft but firm. "We'll anticipate their movements using my abilities. Then we strike when they least expect it, using your military tactics." It was a volatile mix, but for the first time, the beginning of something powerful was forming between them. The skirmish erupted with brutal suddenness. Jackson was the first to react, instinctively pulling Virelia to the ground as blaster fire screamed past them. She gasped in shock, her mental barrier snapping up as she sought control over the situation. "Stay down," Jackson ordered, his voice urgent as he drew his blaster. He fired in quick, calculated bursts, taking down their attackers with terrifying precision. But Virelia was no passive observer. Her hand shot out, and a ripple of psychic energy surged forward, incapacitating two more soldiers with a wave of her mind.
"Impressive," Jackson muttered under his breath, firing again. "You've got more in you than I thought." Virelia, her breath coming in sharp gasps, looked over at him, her heart pounding. "Your training, it's so different, so brutal, but effective." Jackson grinned. "You'll get used to it. Come on, let's move." He handed her a blaster, showing her how to hold it steady. "Now it's your turn. No more standing behind me." Virelia hesitated for a moment, then nodded, her resolve hardening. She raised the weapon, and for the first time, the weight of it felt natural in her hands. She fired, and a soldier fell. Her eyes widened in surprise, not just at the effectiveness of the weapon, but at the thrill of the kill. "Nice shot," Jackson said, his voice softer now. He offered her a quick, approving glance. "You're getting the hang of it." They moved together, covering each other, and for the first time, their differences didn't matter. The battlefield had become a place where they could trust one another, where their strengths complemented each other in ways neither expected. The trust that had been so tenuous before, so fragile, was now a solid foundation. They weren't just two people fighting to survive, they were a team. Virelia stood in the council chamber, the air thick with intrigue and unspoken threats. She could feel the weight of every eye on her, each one calculating, each one waiting for her to falter. The Nanshari Council had called this summit, and she knew the danger of being in this room. Virelia, heir to the throne of the Nanshari, the head of the council spoke, his voice cool and dismissive. "Your methods have proven insufficient for the task ahead. The Empire needs strength, not hesitation. We will replace you." Her heart skipped a beat, but her exterior remained calm, composed. Jackson, standing by her side, could sense the shift in her. He saw her struggle to maintain control, to hide the panic creeping in. "This is a mistake," Virelia said, her voice cold. "You cannot replace me without consequences. The people will not stand for it." Jackson's voice was a low growl at her side. "Don't let them push you. You've got the power to take control." But Virelia was torn. This wasn't just a political maneuver, it was a death sentence. Refusing would mean war, but accepting it would mean losing everything. The council's trap was tightening around her, and Jackson could see the decision weighing on her, the same battle he had fought in his own soul, between survival and honor.
But now, it wasn't just his survival at stake, it was hers too. As the Council's threat loomed larger, Virelia and Jackson realized that their previous conflicts had made them stronger together. Their strategy was unpredictable, a blend of human instincts and Nshari's psychic prowess. Jackson's tactics, raw and impulsive, combined with Virelia's telepathic foresight, created something neither side could predict. They weren't just a pair anymore, they were a force that confounded their enemies, outthinking them at every turn. "We're not playing by the rules anymore," Jackson said, his voice filled with quiet triumph. Virelia nodded, the fire of determination burning in her eyes. Their bond had become their weapon, and together, they would reshape the future. The Nshari capital was a city of elegance and intrigue, its towering spires etched against the twilight sky. The palace was a labyrinth of white stone and gold, filled with lavish halls and hidden agendas. Jackson's footsteps echoed in the pristine corridors, his once unshakable confidence now stripped away. The weight of his disarmed status, the loss of his authority, settled heavily on his shoulders. Virelia walked beside him, her grace hiding the turmoil beneath. The guards, dressed in pristine uniforms, lined the hall, their eyes void of any warmth. To Jackson, they were nothing more than puppets of a higher power, unaware of their own manipulated loyalties. The conspiracy that had been brewing for months now came to fruition. Jackson had been a part of Virelia's inner circle, trusted by her, a human amidst aliens. He had never once doubted that trust, but now, as he saw the guard's eyes flicker with hidden contempt, he felt the sting of betrayal.
In the grand throne room, the High Council awaited. The Queen was there, waiting to deliver her demands, an abdication. A quiet murmur spread among the council members, each wearing the same hollowed expression. "Virelia, you must abdicate," the head counselor ordered, his voice as cold as the stone walls that surrounded them. "Then Nshari cannot be led by someone so volatile." Jackson's heart clenched. He knew what this meant. The moment the Queen yielded, her power would crumble, and the conspirators would have won. "Jackson, leave. You're no longer needed here," the counselor commanded, his eyes fixed on the soldier with disdain. Jackson's breath faltered. His loyalty to Virelia, built on years of service and sacrifice, screamed at him to stay, to protect her, no matter the cost. He could not and would not abandon her. "Not without her," Jackson responded, his voice low, dangerous yet resolute. The words hung in the air, reverberating through the marble hall, defying the palace's oppressive silence. Jackson's hand tightened into a fist, his muscles coiling in preparation. The guards around him were positioned like statues, silent, rigid, waiting for the signal to move. He could feel the pulse of their anticipation, but he refused to bow to it. Virelia, her eyes wide with shock, understood in that moment. Jackson wasn't just here to stand guard. He was here to fight, for her, for the kingdom, and for the future they had once dreamed of together. With a single, decisive motion, Jackson lunged forward, grabbing a nearby ceremonial sword. The sharp edge sliced through the air, cutting through the initial guards with ease, the movement as fluid as instinct. Every swing, every strike was driven by desperation, human ingenuity, and sheer survival. The palace that once seemed like a symbol of power was now a battlefield. Jackson had no formal weapons, no armor, just raw human determination. One guard lunged at him, but Jackson ducked, rolling beneath the attack and rising with a stolen spear. He jabbed the tip into the chest of the next opponent, blood splattering across the pristine floor. The air was thick with tension, sweat, and the acrid scent of fear. Virelia's gaze never left him as she stood frozen, her own psychic powers straining against her, her mind still reeling from the unfolding chaos. But she could see the ferocity in Jackson's eyes, the undying resolve that drove him forward. "Jackson," she whispered, as his movements became more chaotic, desperate to stay ahead of the overwhelming tide of guards. I'm not leaving you." Jackson growled, deflecting another strike, his body moving on autopilot, trained for moments like this. In that moment, he wasn't just fighting for her. He was fighting for something far greater: freedom, dignity, the hope that humanity, even in the face of unimaginable odds, could stand unbroken. The tide of battle shifted as Virelia stepped forward, her mind reaching out to the dark, oppressive energy of the room. She had always kept her psychic abilities in check, relying on diplomacy and subtle influence. But this moment, this defiance, forced her to unlock the full extent of her power. Her eyes glowed faintly, the Enshari psychic energy crackling around her like a storm. The guards faltered as they felt her psychic pulse reverberating through the air. Their movements slowed, their weapons shaking, as they were overwhelmed by a force they could not comprehend. Jackson felt the shift immediately. His heart raced as the power in the room intensified. He turned to Virelia, his gaze meeting hers. Her eyes locked on him, and in that instant, their connection solidified. She wasn't just a queen anymore, she was his equal, and they were fighting side by side, an unstoppable force. Virelia's psychic abilities, once used for control and manipulation, now became a reflection of humanity's unpredictable resilience. She merged her strength with Jackson's raw, unrefined courage. Together, they were unstoppable. As one, they fought back the invading guards, her telekinetic powers weaving seamlessly with his relentless physical determination. It was as though the palace itself seemed to bend beneath their will, a fusion of human instinct and alien power that neither side could have predicted. As the final guard fell, the sounds of the battle slowly subsided. Jackson stood at the center of the chaos, bloodied but resolute. The palace around them was silent once again, the echoes of violence still ringing in the air. But then, the unexpected happened. A lone guard, silent and lethal, emerged from the shadows, blade drawn, aimed directly at Virelia. Jackson moved without thought. He dove, his body slamming into the guard's path, the blade sinking deep into his side. Pain surged through him, but he gritted his teeth and held on. The battle was won, but his fight wasn't over yet. He staggered to his feet, gripping his side as blood pooled at his feet. "I won't let her fall," Jackson rasped, each word a struggle as the world around him blurred. Virelia's gaze softened, but there was no time for comfort, no time for the words they both wanted to say. Her powers surged again, but this time, it wasn't just to protect. It was to heal, to give him the strength to survive, even at the cost of her own reserves. The aftermath of the battle was as quiet as the grave. The palace was still, empty, save for the scattered bodies of those who had sought to betray them. Virelia stood tall, victorious, but her victory was bittersweet. The Nunshari Council had been defeated, but at what cost? Jackson lay on the floor, his breathing shallow but steady. The blood loss had been severe, but Virelia's psychic touch kept him alive, albeit barely. Her hands trembled as she knelt beside him, her thoughts racing. "Jackson," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion, "you didn't have to do this. You've saved me, but at what cost?" His eyes fluttered open, meeting hers with a pained but determined smile. "I did what was right," he whispered, "and I'd do it again if it meant you'd be free." Virelia's eyes glistened with unshed tears, her heart heavy with both sorrow and pride. The price of freedom was high, but it had been paid in full. As the sun rose over the Nunshari capital, casting its golden light over the palace, they knew their journey was far from over. But for the first time, they stood together, not just as allies, but as partners, bound by a loyalty that transcended even the galaxy itself. Virelia stands before the shattered remnants of the Nunshari Council. The once proud structure, filled with stone columns that were now scorched and cracked, echoes with the silence of those who had betrayed her. The air is thick with the scent of ash, mingling with the metallic tang of her blood, a stark reminder of the chaos that had unfolded here just hours ago. Yet, as the dust settles, a new sense of purpose rises within her. With Jackson at her side, his body battered but unbroken, Virelia steps forward. She doesn't just reclaim her birthright, she redefines it. The crown, once a symbol of bloodlines and royal privilege, now represents something far more powerful: earned loyalty. In the wake of her victory, her declaration is simple but profound. "I stand not as your heir," she announces, her voice clear and commanding, "but as your ruler, by the strength of my decisions and the loyalty of those who fought beside me." Her words echo throughout the hall, reverberating off the broken stones and the scattered bodies of her enemies. The Nunshari had long prided themselves on their traditions, on their unwavering devotion to bloodline and power passed down through ancient rites. But today, Varelia chooses a different path, a human path, one of merit, of strength, and of the belief that leadership is earned, not inherited.
For the first time, the Nshari Dominion feels a shift. Her people, once bound by their traditions, now stand on the cusp of a new era. But even as the applause begins, there are whispers of dissent. Not all accept her rule. In the shadows, those who still cling to the old ways plot their next move, unaware that Varelia is no longer the naive princess they once knew. She has become something more, something stronger. In the heart of the palace, Varelia sits upon a throne of obsidian and silver, a seat once reserved for the most powerful Nshari rulers. Before her, the council of her new court stands in uneasy silence. They are the Old Guard, the last remnants of a regime that has been torn down. They are not happy with the changes she has brought. "Your Majesty," one of them speaks up, his voice trembling with barely concealed fury. "This cannot stand. You would allow off-worlders to enter our sacred halls? The very thought of it!" Varelia cuts him off with a glance that silences the room. "I do not rule by tradition. I rule by the will of those who fought to see this day come. The rules are changing. This is a new era." Her decree is more than just a political move. It's a revolution. Jackson stands behind her, a silent reminder of the journey they've both undertaken. The bond between them, forged in blood and betrayal, now symbolizes the core of her new reign. She makes it clear that Jackson will hold the title of First Protector. His loyalty, his humanity, will be her shield and her sword. The tension is palpable. Several members of the council exchange glances, their disapproval unmistakable. But Varelia does not waver. She has seen the cost of tradition and knows it is too high. This court, she declares, will not be a place for the powerful few. It will be a place for those who prove their worth, regardless of where they come from. The room holds its breath. Jackson watches, knowing this is a defining moment for both of them. But this is just the beginning. The old order will not give way easily. As the whispers begin, Varelia feels the weight of the world on her shoulders. But it is a weight she now chooses to bear. The palace gardens are bathed in soft sunlight, a stark contrast to the violence of the recent days. Jackson lies on a cot in a small hospital room, his body still recovering from the wounds he sustained during the uprising. His mind, however, is far from still. His thoughts swirl with the memories of battle, of the violence he'd witnessed, and of the woman he now serves not just as a protector, but as an equal. Varelia sits by his side, her presence steady and unspoken. She has become something she never expected. Not a distant leader, but a woman who commands respect with a quiet strength that mirrors his own. In this room, there are no words between them. Their bond has transcended the need for dialogue. The silence speaks volumes. Jackson watches her from the corner of his eyes, the way she moves with purpose, the way she carries the weight of the throne with grace and determination. The woman who once feared the chaos of the world now stands poised to reshape it. He reaches out and grips her hand, a silent gesture of gratitude. She looks at him, and for a moment, their gazes lock in a shared understanding. They are not the same people they were when this journey began. Both have been forged by fire, and now, in the calm of this quiet space, they are stronger for it.
The bond between Jackson and Varelia deepens in the weeks following the uprising. Though the kingdom has been reshaped, there is no grand declaration, no need for words to define what has blossomed between them. Their connection speaks for itself. Jackson, once a reluctant soldier, is no longer just a protector. He is her confidant, her partner in every sense of the word. Varelia too has changed. She has shed the naivety of her youth and embraced her role as a leader, not because of her bloodline, but because of her strength. And Jackson has played a crucial part in that transformation. His loyalty, unwavering and true, has become the foundation upon her rule is built. In quiet moments, they share more than just strategy. They share their hopes and fears, their dreams for the future. The trust between them is unspoken but absolute. There are no barriers between them, just two individuals who have faced the darkness together and emerged stronger for it.
As the Nshari Dominion begins to rebuild, so too do Varelia and Jackson. The chaos is behind them, but the road ahead is uncertain. Varelia stands at the edge of the palace balcony, looking out over the city she now rules. The sun is setting, casting a golden glow over the landscape. But even as peace settles, she knows that challenges await. Jackson stands beside her, his presence a constant reassurance. The future is unwritten, but with him by her side, she feels ready for whatever comes next. The lessons of the past have shaped them both. Now, together, they will face the unknown. Whatever comes, Varelia says softly, we face it together. Jackson nods, his eyes fixed on the horizon. Always. And with that, they turn back toward the palace. The future may be uncertain, but one thing is clear, their story is just beginning. Setting: a quiet, rural schoolroom. A small, sunlit classroom where children sit. The faint hum of a distant wind is heard through the windows. The air is calm, but there is a heavy weight in the room. History has changed, and the future is unfolding. The teacher, an elderly Nshari with a thoughtful gaze, holds up an old book, its pages yellowed and worn from use. The class is quiet, waiting for the lesson to begin. Teacher: who can tell me who changed the Nshari forever? The children glance at one another, eyes wide with curiosity. One small child, perhaps no older than 8, raises their hand with a shy yet proud smile. Child: the princess who saw differently, and the human who wouldn't leave her side. The teacher's eyes soften, and a solemn silence fills the room as the words hang in the air. The answer is simple, yet it carries the weight of 1,000 battles fought and won, of lives transformed and cultures reshaped. And so, the legacy began, not with an army of soldiers, nor a crown of gold, but with the quiet defiance of a leader who saw beyond tradition, and a human who, against all odds, chose to stand by her side. The shift from war to peace, from oppression to freedom, had been set into motion. The teacher's words were not just a lesson in history, but a promise of a brighter tomorrow, shaped by those who dared to believe in something better. The halls of the Nshari Palace, the once grand chambers, are now quiet, filled with a sense of reverence and peace. Varelia stands alone before the council, her regal presence no longer one of fear or expectation, but of power earned through perseverance and vision. Varelia's reign had begun not as an heir to a throne, but a leader forged in the fires of rebellion. Her decision to break from the chains of tradition and welcome all beings, regardless of origin, into her court was not an act of power, it was an act of vision. A vision of a new Nshari dominion, one founded on merit, loyalty, and the strength of character. Her name would be remembered not just as the princess who inherited a kingdom, but as the ruler who reshaped a society from the ground up. In the distance, echoes of her decisions resound through the halls of history. Her courage, her willingness to listen, to grow, and to stand alongside the human who had changed her life would be sung in the stories of the future. A council meeting, years after the revolution. The large domed chamber is filled with Nshari leaders, their faces marked by age, wisdom, and the burden of history. At the head of the table stands Varelia, now sovereign, her eyes focused and unwavering.
Behind her stands Jackson, older, scarred, but still the same. The stoic protector, a silent sentinel in her court. In the silence of the room, Jackson's eyes are steadfast, watching over Varelia with the same dedication he had shown when she was a princess of the Old Order. His role had evolved, but his duty remained the same. He would stand by her no matter the cost. In the quiet, unspoken bond between them, the future of the Nshari Dominion was being shaped. One decision, one battle, one sacrifice at a time. And though time had passed and the wars had ended, Jackson's loyalty remained a constant, as enduring as the stars themselves.